The distress beacon had been silent for 17 years. Captain Maya Torres knew this because she'd been monitoring it since the day it went dark, the day the Exodus Wars ended, the day humanity signed the armistice with the Krell Collective, and the day she lost everything that mattered. Now at 43, she sat alone in the bridge of the cargo hauler Meridian, nursing cold coffee and staring at a screen that showed nothing but static. The ship groaned around her, its aging systems protesting another jump through slip space. She'd made this run 1,000 times, medical supplies to Outpost Vega, industrial components to the mining colonies, a paycheck that kept her flying and questions at bay. The alert came at 3:47 hours. At first, she thought it was a malfunction. The Krell distress frequency hadn't registered a ping in nearly 2 decades. But there it was, a weak, stuttering signal originating from the Ashara expanse, deep in what used to be the war's most brutal front line. Her hand hovered over the delete key. Every instinct screamed at her to ignore it, to let whatever dying Krell ship was out there fade back into the void. The Krell had taken her squadron, her career, and 3 years of her life in a prison complex where they'd turned human minds into experimental data. She deleted the alert. The ship jumped to slip space. The stars stretched into white lines outside the viewport. Maya closed her eyes, trying to sleep, but the signal haunted her. It pulsed in her mind with the same rhythm as the torture devices they'd used, a metronome of pain that had counted away 1,000 days. The alert came again at 5:12 hours, same frequency, same location, but this time buried in the static there was something else, a pattern, a code. She ran it through her old military decryption software, half expecting it to be nonsense. But the translation made her blood turn to ice. Human life signs detected. Immediate extraction required. That was impossible. All prisoners had been released during the armistice. The exchange had been verified, documented, celebrated. She'd watched the feeds herself, haggard humans stumbling off Krell transport ships, reuniting with families, receiving medals for survival. But she'd also seen the classified reports, the ones that mentioned discrepancies in the prisoner count, 47 names that had gone unanswered when called, 47 ghosts that the coalition had buried under bureaucracy and the urgent need to move forward. Maya sat in the darkness of her bridge, watching the coordinates blink on her screen. The Ashara expanse was 3 days off her route, 3 days that would cost her the contract, probably her ship, and any chance of maintaining the carefully constructed isolation that had kept her functional. She changed course. The expanse was a graveyard. Shattered hulls of warships, both human and Krell, drifted in a slow, eternal ballet. Debris fields sparkled with frozen coolant and crystallized blood. This was where the war's final battle had raged, where the combined fleet had made its last desperate stand against the Krell flagship Oblivion. Maya's sensors painted the scene in cold blue light. Radiation levels were high but manageable. Gravity wells from destroyed ships created treacherous navigation hazards. And there, at the heart of the debris field, was the source of the signal. It was a Krell medical frigate, the Serenity, if the name could be believed. Its organic hull was scarred and dark, most of its bioluminescent systems dead. But a single section still pulsed with faint amber light, a heartbeat in a corpse. She suited up, checking her weapon out of habit. The last time she'd been on a Krell ship, she'd been dragged aboard in chains. Her hands shook as she sealed the helmet. 17 years hadn't dulled the memory of those corridors, the smell of the air, the sound their language made when they were curious about how much pain a human nervous system could process. The docking collar engaged with a wet, organic sound. Maya's stomach turned. Krell ships were grown, not built, living vessels bonded to their crews. Boarding one always felt like being swallowed. The airlock opened onto darkness. She activated her suit's lights, casting a harsh white beam through the corridor. The walls were withered, the veins that once pulsed with life now dry and cracked. Her boots stuck slightly to the floor with each step, pulling free with a sound like tearing paper. The signal was coming from the medical bay. Of course it was. Maya moved through the ship, her rifle raised, her breath coming in short, controlled bursts. Every shadow was a threat. Every corner hid a memory. She'd been in rooms like these, strapped to tables that adjusted to hold human anatomy, while Krell physicians studied her responses to their treatments. The medical bay doors were sealed, but the lock mechanism was dead. She used her plasma torch to cut through, the metal glowing orange before collapsing inward. What she found inside broke something in her that had barely been holding together. There were 12 of them, humans, suspended in Krell stasis pods, their bodies preserved but conscious, a nightmare of awareness trapped in paralysis. Their eyes moved, tracking her as she entered. Their mouths formed silent screams behind the translucent membranes. And in the center pod, marked with a rank insignia she recognized, was Lieutenant David Chen, her second in command, her friend. The man who'd covered her escape during the ambush that had led to her capture, who she'd assumed had died in the assault. He'd been here the entire time. They all had. The stasis pods were failing. Life support was at critical levels. According to the readouts, they had perhaps 6 hours before the systems collapsed completely. Maya's hands moved on autopilot, checking the pod controls, calculating extraction protocols. But her mind was elsewhere, trapped in a loop of horror and guilt. 17 years. They'd been conscious, aware, trapped in their own bodies for 17 years while she'd been flying cargo routes and telling herself she'd left the war behind. "I'm getting you out," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm getting all of you out." The extraction process was agonizing. The stasis pods were designed for Krell physiology. Removing humans required careful recalibration or risk killing them. Maya worked with shaking hands, referencing emergency medical protocols she'd hoped never to use again. She started with Chen. His pod hissed open, the membrane retracting. He gasped, his body convulsing as sensation returned. His eyes, wild and unfocused, locked onto her face. For a moment she saw no recognition. Then something shifted and tears began streaming down his cheeks. "Maya," his voice was a rasp barely human, "is this real?" "It's real, David, I'm here. I'm getting you all home." But as she moved to the next pod, the ship's alarms began to wail. Her suit's sensors lit up with proximity warnings. Something was approaching. Multiple signatures, big ones. Through the viewport she saw them. A Krell patrol squadron, their ships cutting through the debris field with predatory grace. They detected her presence, detected the power surge from activating the stasis pods. Maya's blood went cold. The armistice had ended official hostilities, but this far out, in the contested zones, Krell patrols operated under different rules. And a human on an abandoned medical ship, liberating prisoners that weren't supposed to exist, would be seen as evidence of treaty violations. They'd kill her, they'd kill the prisoners, and they'd bury the truth so deep it would never see light. She had minutes, maybe less. "Listen to me," she said to Chen, helping him stand on shaking legs. "We need to move, now. Can you help me with the others?" Together, they began the desperate extraction, pulling bodies from pods, half-carrying semi-conscious prisoners through the corridors. The Krell ships were closing. Maya could hear the deep vibration as they prepared to dock. They reached the meridian with seconds to spare. She shoved the last prisoner through the airlock, Chen helping from the other side, and slammed the controls. The docking collar disengaged just as the first Krell soldiers appeared in the corridor behind her. The Meridian broke away from the medical frigate, its engines screaming. Weapons fire lanced through the space around them, missing by meters. Maya pushed the ship into a debris field, using the wreckage as cover, her fingers flying over the navigation controls. "Hold on," she shouted. The cargo hauler was never meant for combat maneuvering. It shuddered and groaned, alarms blaring as she pushed it past safety limits. Behind them, the Krell ships gave chase, their organic weapons systems charging for a kill shot. Maya made a choice. She'd sworn never to return to active combat, never to use the skills that had been carved into her in fire and blood. But watching those prisoners' faces, seeing 17 years of suffering in their eyes, she remembered why she'd become a soldier in the first place. She armed the Meridian's mining charges, industrial explosives meant for asteroid work. She laid them out behind her ship like breadcrumbs, timing each release with precision. Then she cut the engines and drifted, silent, as the Krell ships closed in. They fired. The charges detonated. The explosive chain reaction tore through 3 Krell vessels, their organic hulls rupturing in violent blooms of atmosphere and fluid. The surviving ships broke off, regrouping. Maya punched the engines to full burn and jumped to slip space before they could recover. The Coalition Military Command at Cornerstone Station received them with weapons locked and questions ready. 12 prisoners who didn't officially exist, liberated by a disgraced captain from a ship that wasn't supposed to be there, represented a political nightmare of the highest order. Maya stood in the debriefing room, Chen beside her, and told them everything. The signal, the medical frigate, the Krell patrol, the evidence of ongoing detention operations in violation of the armistice. The admiral across from her, a woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war, listened in silence. When Maya finished, the room hung in tension. "This is your report?" the admiral asked. "Your official statement?" "Yes, ma'am." "You understand the implications. If what you're saying is true, the armistice was negotiated under false pretenses. The Krell hid prisoners and we accepted their lies. This could restart the war. Or, Chen spoke for the first time, his voice still rough, it could expose the truth. Those prisoners, we weren't military assets anymore. We were research subjects. The Krell were studying long-term effects of consciousness imprisonment. They kept us because we were valuable data. He pulled up his sleeve, showing the port scars where Krell technology had interfaced with his nervous system. This is what they wanted to perfect. A weapon that doesn't kill, it traps. Imagine deploying this against an enemy fleet, not destroying them but freezing every crew member in conscious paralysis. The ships still function, the bodies still live, but the minds are locked away. The admiral's face had gone pale. Weaponized consciousness imprisonment. "We're the proof it works," Maya said. "And if there are 12 prisoners on one abandoned medical ship, how many more are out there? How many facilities are still operating in the dark?" The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. 3 months later, Maya stood on the observation deck of Cornerstone Station, watching ships come and go. The Coalition had launched Operation Lighthouse, a systematic sweep of all former Krell military zones, looking for hidden detention sites. They'd found 4 more. 63 additional prisoners had been recovered. The armistice was holding, but barely. The Krell Collective had issued a formal apology, claiming the facilities had been operated by a rogue medical division. They'd handed over the commanding officers for trial. The political dance continued, but the truth was out, and it was burning. Chen approached, moving better now. Months of rehabilitation had restored most of his physical function. The psychological scars would take longer. "The council offered me my commission back," he said, standing beside her. "Full restoration of rank, commendation, a position in intelligence." "You taking it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to make sure this never happens again." He paused. "But part of me just wants to forget, to find some quiet corner of the galaxy and pretend none of this happened." Maya understood that better than anyone. "What did you tell them?" "That I needed time, that I'd answer when I was ready." He looked at her. "What about you? They offered you your captaincy back, a ship of your own, a chance to return to service." She'd been asked the same question in a dozen different ways. The answer never changed. No, I'm not a soldier anymore, David. I'm not sure I ever really was. I was just someone who was trying to survive, and the military gave me a framework to do it in. So what will you do? Maya smiled, the first genuine one in months. The Meridian needs repairs, and once it's spaceworthy, I'm taking it back out. There are a lot of debris fields out there, a lot of old battle sites. If there's one thing the war taught me, it's that people don't give up easy. Someone's got to keep looking. Chen nodded slowly. You're going to keep searching. Someone has to. She turned to face him. The signal found me because I was listening, even when I didn't want to be. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. Keep listening. Keep looking. Make sure no one else spends 17 years waiting for someone to care enough to come back. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there in the darkness between worlds, other voices were calling. Other prisoners were waiting. Other truths were buried. And Maya Torres, cargo hauler captain, would find them. Because some wars don't end with treaties. They end when the last prisoner comes home.